It's iBrand Daybreak Monday morning. Now, for our topic today, from Kankara to Gagara, then Jengbede or Jengebe, and now another in Brenin Yauri, Kebbi State. The recent abductions are yet another tragic reminder of the security challenges that persist and how schools and school children remain a target for armed bandits. Today, we'll be focusing on the abduction of school children, and to help analyze this is a public affairs analyst, Shegun Shopiton. Hello, Shegun. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Yes, good morning.
Thank you for joining us, Shegun.
Okay. All right. Now, insecurity in the country has left. Yeah. Okay. You can hear me, Shegun, right?
Thank you for having me.
Okay. I was going to say that insecurity in the country has adversely affected all sectors and all facets of life. And abduction of school children has left a tale of woe in all sectors and sour taste in most of our families.
Yes.
What's your thought on this?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Go ahead, Mr. Shobeton.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so it's very unfortunate, the situation that we find ourselves, and there is no, pardon me, there is no other place to turn our eyes, our attention, and to hold responsible and accountable than the government. And now, when I say the government, I mean the federal government and the state government in particular. Because, this insecurity situation has exacerbated over the last year and a half, and this is statistical. The number of killings, the number of incidents that we have had has been increasing on a very steady and regular basis, and it's getting worse by the day. It shows very clearly that the government has lost control. The government at all levels have lost control of this situation, and something different needs to be done. The government needs to understand that whatever they're doing now is clearly not working. If you have bandits going into schools almost at will, with ease, to pick up students in cities. If they can pick up students in Abuja, they can pick up students in Niger State, they can pick up students in Kaduna State. It just calls to question whether we actually do have a government. It feels like an ungoverned space right now, and we're talking of major cities in Nigeria. So it's very unfortunate. And of course, as you know, without security, everything else falls flat on its face.
All right, now there is a current trend of these abductions, and the systems are alike, almost alike. Nigerians suspect that there is a foul play, because now there's no way people would go into schools in a community or in a place and abduct large number of students without people seeing them. Of course, they would come with means of transportations, and for it to be a trend, it happened once, it happened twice, happened thrice, and it keeps happening. So Nigerians are suspecting the foul play. What do you think?
Well, it's in a situation where there is no coordination, there is no direction. What you have is everybody will have their own theory and their own opinions and their own ideas. So the truth of the matter is that nobody knows exactly what is going on. And sadly, it looks as if even the government doesn't know exactly what is going on. Recently, as we all know, it was in the news all over the place about the Sheikh Gumi's comments, for which he was invited by the DSS, accusing elements within the security services of conniving, and colluding with these criminals. Even the Sheikh Gumi himself, there are people who say this guy must have a hand in this. He simply appears to know too much. So it will not be out of place to suspect that there is some level of foul play involved at some level, especially, if you just think about the fact that almost any situation that you look at or examine in this life, if it's something and you find your money involved in business is massive. So the incentive for people to compromise, especially where there's you can't rule it out at all.
Now, before now, the target of kidnappers was the rich and the wealthy. Now, everybody knows the focus has shifted from there to school children. What could be the reason for this?
And I think that's, so there are two, for me, in target children would be the obvious strategy for anybody that wants easy, in quotes, easy money. The level of resistance that you would have would be less. And, the level of trouble, the maintenance costs, and all of that would be lower. That's one. But secondly, and very, very crucially, is the psychological play of that on every stakeholder and everybody that is involved. If you kidnap an adult, at some point, some people might be, so if you kidnap a 60-year-old man, for example, or a 70-year-old man, at some point, depending on how your mind works, so as callous and hard as that might sound, but when you kidnap children, there is a massive sentimental and emotional factor that will come into play. The government, the part of society, the citizens, everybody will be saying, look, these are children. They are the most vulnerable that need protection. So that will definitely play into the hands of the kidnappers, because then the motivation to negotiate and to pay ransom just to secure the freedom of these children is much higher. So I think that's why they're going in that direction.
Well, you mentioned easy money. One of the facts you pointed out, easy money and the emotional factor that comes with kidnap of children. Now, there are children everywhere in Nigeria. You get children on the streets. As matter of fact, the northern part of Nigeria has almajiris that are littered everywhere. And now, what the target are children in schools and university students, college of education students, college of just students generally. Now the thing is, don't you think it's in a bit to cripple the educational system, especially in the north? Because remember, the northern states now don't even have enough. We have lots of children who are out of school there. So don't think they're trying to cripple that system? Because if you talk about children, you can kidnap children from the streets. You can kidnap children from anywhere. So why school children? That's the point. School children, not just children, even young teenagers, young adults in universities too.
Yeah. Yes. To my mind, the answer to that would be relatively simple. The children, if you just talk about children generally and you pick up children off the streets, the fact that that child is on the streets means that he has no roots and has no incentive to negotiate with you. But when you pick students in universities, the fact that they can go to school means that somebody sent them there. So there is an immediate stakeholder that becomes your target for negotiations. So I'm not so sure this would have to do with trying to cripple the education sector as much as just being the obvious economic. You go for a target that has the highest economic value. Students would fall into that category very neatly, because you would have to assume the affluence to be able to go to university. If it was just to cripple the education sector, then you would have to cast your mind back to what Boko Haram win in the early 80s and practically slaughter children. That was pure terror. This was to create fear in the minds of people so that they don't send their children to school. That was a deliberate effort to cripple education in line with the idea of Boko Haram. But these guys, even though that are some of them might be from Boko Haram or might be, remnants of the so-called defeated Boko Haram, but it will seem as if they are not necessarily pursuing any ideology. This is purely economic for them. And I think that's why they are targeting students.
Abduction these days is very, very lucrative. The abductors or kidnappers are doing this because they make a lot of money out of it. Now, the only source they make this, from which they make this money is through ransom or payment of ransom. Right now, we know if they do this and ransom is not paid, money is not coming anymore. And they want to abandon this business and face something else. Should we continue to pay ransom to these abductors?
My brother, look, this is a very, very complex question because there are so many variables involved. On the one hand, you say, as long as you continue to pay ransom, like you've said, then it continues to be an incentive for more people to get involved, in this business. It means that you are succeeding. On the other hand, if you refuse to pay ransom, then you are going to face a huge backlash if something were to happen to those children. If you recall some of the children that were kidnapped, I think it was from Kaduna State, one of the schools in Kaduna State. They killed about 5 of them off before the ransom money was paid, and that was very, very tragic. So you won't have a choice but to pay this ransom because you can't afford to see these people killed because you refused to pay ransom. So for a government, the real challenge is you should never allow yourself to get to the point where people can simply walk into places and pick up targets easily and pick up and then start demanding for ransom. Once you get into that place, you've already handicapped yourself and you don't have a choice but to negotiate. So what government needs to do is actually to prevent these things from happening by leveraging more heavily on local intelligence. They have to work because, look, these guys are not spirits. They don't just disappear and reappear. They don't come from outer space. They drive through villages. They drive through communities. There is somewhere that they are, even if it's in the forests, there are people around those forests. So government needs to do a bit more to prevent the kidnappings. Once the kidnapping has happened, I'm afraid the government might not have a choice than to negotiate and pay ransom.
Now, the northern cleric, Sheikh Gumi, has, in your words and in the words of lots of Nigerians, say he knows a lot. He seems to know a lot. And now, people think the government is taking this lightly, because for someone who knows that much, he negotiates, he speaks with them, he knows. Now, my question now is, do you think the government and security agencies are paying much attention to the security challenges in the nation? Because outside Nigeria, people who know that much should not be left walking on the streets just like that, because they know way too much, more than the government or security agencies even know. So, what do you think?
Yeah, it's one of the, it's a very, very strange, I tell you, this is really, really strange. It's a strange situation where a private citizen who is not a government official, is a non-state actor, goes boldly on air, repeatedly, not once, not twice, repeatedly, with picture evidence, with video evidence, to show and say that he is in talks with criminals that are wanted by the state. It is, I don't understand it. It's unbelievable. So you begin to wonder why and what is going on there. There's so much, more questions than answers, really, with regards to Sheikh, this guy. I would have expected, for example, that given how much he knows and given how confident he is about what he knows and what he's saying, that government would have perhaps harnessed him, brought him into their fold, and used him quietly. He is doing so much damage with all of the utterances he's making regarding, he's actually defending and speaking on behalf of these criminals. He says when you call them criminals, he will tell you, no, they are not criminals. They have a grudge and they have a grouse, and that's why they're doing this. He calls them youth. He calls them misguided youth. You know, it's strange. So I was sort of happy when the DSS, we heard that they had invited him, but then again, he's denied that. And the DSS has also said they didn't arrest him. You know, they just called him to warn him. You know, it's all very, very strange. And it just leaves so much room for all sorts of conspiracy theories in normal parts of the world, you know, and that's not necessarily to say that this part of the world is abnormal, but in normal places, this thing just simply can't happen. That guy will either be working with the security agencies or he will be in their custody by now. He can't be walking free. And our government needs to do something about this because he's doing more damage. He's doing more harm than good, sadly.
Now, Segun, how could this be strange when Sheikh Gumi himself has come out in public and boldly stated that his meeting with these bandits is endorsed or has the backing of the federal government?
Yes, but if that is to be the case, and if that is true, then he would not be saying the things that he's saying. You know, the problem I have is not so much how and why he knows so much. There are always people in society and in communities that would have connections with everybody. You know, every criminal, every armed robber, every murderer is a father, is a brother, is a son to somebody. So there would always be people that are connected to these guys. And it is not strange. Well, Gumi having so much knowledge because he's a respected cleric of, you know, in that region is not actually a strange thing. Him working with the federal government is not even a strange or bad thing. What is strange is you cannot, on the one hand, say you are endorsed to work with the federal government, and on the other hand, come out to defend criminals and come out to lie on their behalf. You know, when you come out and say, you know, he's basically trying to desensitize Nigerians as to the criminality of the actions of these guys. He's trying to give them a human face. He's trying to make them look ordinary. These guys are not ordinary. These are drug-using, hardened criminals that kill. They kill. And, you know, Sheikh Gumi is on record to have said, these guys don't kill anybody. How can you be working with the federal government and be speaking for and defending criminals that the same federal government is looking for? It makes no sense. So I very, very much doubt that he's working with any federal government. I think we just have a situation where, for some strange reason, the federal government is not doing what they are supposed to do. What they need to do is very obvious. But for some unknown reason, they're not doing it.
All right. Thank you, Segun Shobiton, for sharing your thoughts on this. We have a lot to say about it, but for the want of time, we may not be able to take all your contributions. But nevertheless, we thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll be speaking to... You're welcome. We're speaking with Segun Shobiton, public affairs analyst. We'll take a short break now. After the break, sport lovers, it's your time. So, go nowhere. We'll be right back.